right, good morning, everybody. Good morning. Nobody's ever actually said good morning back to me. That was kind of threw me off a little bit. My name is Scott Delphia. I work for Bexar County Military and Veteran Services. I am a veteran service officer with the county. So what is a veteran service officer, right? So we are accredited with the VA to prepare, present, and prosecute VA disability claims on your behalf, okay? So what we're gonna do is, when you came in, you should have gotten a piece of paper from Joe and Lauren over there. That piece of paper, if you fill it out, it has some personal information on there so that we can put you in our system. And then once we're done with this presentation, go back over to the counter if you want an appointment with us, okay? We have to sign a form. It's a VA form that is an appointment of a veteran service organization as your representative. It makes it so that it's legal for us to actually do the claim, send the claim, all that stuff on your behalf. So again, if you want to see us, bring your piece of paper over there once you're done with it, and at the end, go back over there so that we can sign the form and send it up to the VA today. Now, next Monday, we're gonna come back. So if you are ready to file a claim, or you got all your paperwork squared away and you come and see us next Monday, we'll have a bunch of veteran service officers here to sit down and work your claim, submit your claim, and send it right then and there, okay? So that'll be next Monday. All right, so like I said, my name is Scott Delphia. I'm retired Air Force. I am a veteran service officer with Bexar County. We do a ton of stuff at Bexar County, right? Not just the VA stuff, but we do employment things and all that. But what we're gonna go over today is basic VA claims, okay? So if you've already done a claim before, you're already ahead of curve, okay? If you have not done a claim before, we're gonna go over some basics. Maybe if you are familiar with the process, there's gonna be maybe some new information that you didn't know before, okay? So a little overview of what we're gonna be talking about. So who's Bexar County? What do we do? Why would you go with Bexar County? I mean, there's hundreds of veteran service organizations out there. We just happen to serve Bexar County, and we're here today, so I will convince you to use us. Basic eligibility for benefits. What is required by federal law in order to be eligible for VA disability compensation or any of the other programs? VA claim basic requirements, all right, that's the meat and potatoes. We're gonna go over every claim type, so there's probably gonna be some things in there that don't apply to you. Like there's a benefits delivery and discharge program where if you're just about to get out of the military, you can file a claim, and I'm sure you all don't need that, but we'll talk about it for a second. We'll talk about veteran pension as well. What's the difference between compensation and pension? We're gonna talk about the PACT Act, right? So in August of 2022, the federal government signed into law the Promise to Address Comprehensive Toxins Act to assist veterans who've been exposed to toxins file for VA disability claims with a less of a burden of proof on the veteran, right? Because with everything, with the VA, it's all evidence-based, okay? It's all federal law. You must provide evidence to the VA to be awarded disability compensation. This removes a lot of those barricades, okay? We'll talk about the appeals process. We'll talk about survivor benefits. We'll talk about VA math. We'll do that real quick because I don't like doing public math, but I'll talk about how they kind of come up with that number that makes no sense. And then we'll do a little bit of a conclusion, and then I'm gonna open it up for questions, okay? But if you do have a question while I'm talking about something, just raise your hand. That's not a problem. I'd be happy to answer in the middle of something. Yeah, there'll be an open forum kind of at the end for anybody to ask any questions they have. All right, so what do we do, right? So we're accredited, like I said, by the VA. So we go through a ton of training, annual training, all that stuff. We're accredited by the VA to help you with your claims, okay? So what kind of claims do? We do benefits delivery and discharge, or initial claims or first-time claims, right? If you want to add new stuff, if you want to increase the ratings on things you already have, if you had a claim that was denied, we can help you with the appeals process. If you are going to get surgery or something on a service-connected condition, we can help you get that temporary 100% disability while you convalesce. Total disability based off of individual unemployability, which is if you're not at 100%, but your conditions prevent you from having a full-time job, we can help with that claim as well. Pension claims and survivor claims, all right? So if you are the surviving spouse of a deceased veteran, you are entitled to different benefits depending on kind of what you would qualify for, right? Or if you just kind of want to set things up now for your loved ones later, that's something that we can absolutely help with as well. All right, so why Bexar County, right? Well, veteran service organizations, like I said, there's hundreds of them. But what I like to think of is we are your community asset, right? So we're here in the county, we live here, we work here, we're all part of the same community, right? So with that, you could go to the VFW, you could go to the American Legion, DAV, like I said, hundreds of organizations in the area, but we do things a little bit different, right? So we tailor our appointments to specifically what you need help with. A lot of those other organizations, it's like 30 minutes in and out, right? Whatever you need to get done is done hopefully within that 30 minutes. Depending on the claim you do with us, it could be anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on what you need help with, right? So we could sit down, from start to finish, work the whole claim, and then sign it and send it. And we also do case management. So if you file a claim, say with me or with Joe, I'm your guy, or Joe's your guy, right? So if you got questions, you talk to him. Some of these other organizations, if you call, you may talk to a different person every time you have a question, right? So that's the difference between us and them, is we are here from submittal to adjudication on your claim and beyond if you want to, file claims afterwards. And it's important to know, it's very important to know, that it is against federal law for a VSO that is accredited through the VA to charge you to do a VA claim. All right, these services are completely free. Okay, so if you are going around online and you find a reputable organization that is going to charge you an arm and a leg to submit a piece of paper that you had to fill out yourself, that's probably a scam, okay? So if you go to the VA website, you can search for accredited VSOs. You just put in your zip code and the whole list of everybody that's accredited will pop up. I'm on there, Joe's on there, everybody from our organization's on there with our phone number. So again, if somebody's trying to charge you money to do a VA claim, that is a massive red flag and you need to walk away from it, okay? All right, any questions so far? No? Okay. One of the things about being a county veteran service officer is that we service people within our county, okay? So if you're a Bexar County resident, we got you. But if you're not, if you live in like Guadalupe or Comal or wherever else, there's other VSOs out there. We can always do like a soft handoff and kind of say, hey, here's the person you do need to talk to. All right, so this is a lot of words right here, right? So this is pulled straight out of the Code of Federal Regulations. This is federal law. This talks about basically the eligibility of VA benefit, right? So bottom line is if you served honorably, you're good. All right, if you have anything other than a dishonorable or bad conduct discharge, you're good, okay? But I just wanted to kind of throw out here the different reasons why you may not be good, but they all pretty much lead to the same thing, that the bad chicken dinner and all that business, right? So you don't want that. But if you're here and you're retired or you separated honorably, you're good. You don't have to worry about this part. All right, so here's some basics of VA claims, right? So one of the most common things that we do is intent to files. If you come to an appointment with us and you are not quite ready to file your VA claim, we can submit what's called an intent to file, which is a document that essentially says, hey VA, I want to file a claim, I'm just not ready to do it right now. I need a year to get my stuff together, okay? So the intent to file gives you 1 year from the day that it's received by the VA to file your claim, and then your effective date remains the day that it was received, okay? So why is that important? Now, if it takes you 6 months to get all your stuff together, and say you get awarded either an increase or your first, rating, your effective date is the day that it was received, and that's all your back pay. Okay, so you get up to a year back pay, or maybe even longer, depending on how long it takes for your claim to adjudicate. So that's why it's important, if you're not ready, do an intent to file. All right. right, so yeah, we talked a little bit about benefits, delivery, discharge. We're going to skip that. That doesn't apply. Initial claims, if you need help with first-time claim, we can absolutely help you out with that. We'll tell you kind of what documents you need. Is anybody here planning on doing a first-time claim? Okay, so for first, if you've never filed with the VA before, one of the biggest things we're going to need is going to be your DD-214. So if you got a copy of that, awesome. If not, we can always go submit an intent to file and then do a request with the National Archive to get your entire record of anything you may not have with you now. It usually takes about 2 to 3 months to hear back from National Archive, but we can definitely help you out with that, not a problem. All right, so future claims, right? So if you are, if you've never filed before, there's no time limit on your first time claim. Increased claims, there's no time limit on that either. There's really no time limit on any of these things. Some of the other stuff, like your initial claim within 1 year of separation, doesn't really apply to all y'all. But just so you know, it doesn't matter if you served 10 years ago or 40 years ago, you can still file a claim, no problem. All right, so adding dependents, right? So if you are at least 30% combined rating with the VA, you can apply for a dependent compensation, okay? So 30% is the magic number. So if you're married, you can file for your spouse and to get paid a little bit extra for being married, essentially. So when we go to do one of those claims, the things we're gonna need is your spouse's full name, date of birth, and location of their birth, okay? We'll need their social security number for the form, a copy of your marriage certificate, and if there's any adult children that are disabled or children of any kind, we need birth certificates. But for a spouse, copy of the marriage certificate, their social, and basically their full name, date of birth, and where they were born. All right, so what makes a good claim? So what I will say is that a lot of claims get denied because evidence was not submitted for the claim. So if you just, fill out the form and submit it and hope for the best, it's probable that your claim is going to get denied, or at least the VA may send you a letter saying, hey, we need a lot more information than what you gave us. So evidence is critical, and unfortunately the burden is on you to provide that evidence to the VA. Now the VA has what's called a duty to assist, where they can order medical exams. They can, if you have private medical doctors that have records, we can ask the VA to request those records on your behalf with some additional forms and all that. But at the end of the day, even if we ask the VA for help to get records, it's still on you to get those records, okay? So what they'll do is they'll send 3 letters out to the physician or their office, and if they get negative replies each time, the VA will send you a letter that says, hey, we tried, but we couldn't get the evidence. Are you able to do it, right? So what I always recommend is try to get those records if you can, okay? Whether it's a phone call or filling out a form or whatever, the more evidence you come in to your appointment with, the better chances you have of having your claim adjudicated favorably. So there's a couple of different things here as far as types of service connection. So the VA needs to have 3 things in order to grant disability benefits, okay? Number 1 is a diagnosis of a condition, okay? So if you say, hey, my back hurts, but you've never gone to the doctor for it, there's no record that your back hurts, right? Now you could say, of course it hurts, but without being seen by a physician and having those records, it's really kind of hard to tell the VA definitively, yes, you do have issues with your back. So then we have to prove service connection. So diagnosis or complaint in service, a service connection, right? So did this happen in service? Or is this caused by something that maybe you got hurt while you were in, and then years later, just through like living life and degenerative arthritis and things like that, based off of that injury, we could always tie it to that. Yes, ma'am. Yes, so the question was, does the VA have a way to check military service treatment records or military medical records? The answer is yes. So what I had said a little while ago, where with the DD-214, we could do a National Archive request. We could do a National Archive request for all of your records. The VA does the exact same thing, right? So, but the problem is when the VA does it, it goes directly to the VA. You don't get it, right? You don't get a copy of it. So it's always good to kind of double tap where we ask the VA, hey, can you grab these records? And we also ask for those records so that you, the VSO, can go through it, figure out, okay, yeah, back on this date, you did see you did go to the clinic for XYZ. Yes, they do have a way to look at that. That's part of their duty to assist, where they'll reach out and grab your medical records from the military.
Even if some of those records were in that fire?
Well, yeah. Okay, so the follow-up question is, if your records were part of the fire in St. Louis in 1973, they're burnt up, right? There's no way to recover those. But what the VA or the National Archive will probably ask is, do you still have anything that could help? And the likelihood of that's probably low, right? But they'll still say, hey, we can reconstruct records with anything that you may have. Okay. Now there's ways around that. Say we go into like presumptive conditions, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. And there's no record of you being in Vietnam or wherever, overseas. And say you have some photographs of you, in that area, or maybe letters home, or, whatever the case is to kind of put you in that place at that time. We can use that type of evidence in lieu of the, whatever the National Archive may have for personnel or military medical records and all of that. So there's a way to kind of rebuild it. We could also use statements from family members, friends, things like that. They're like, yes, I swear that this person was in this location during this time and all that. There's ways around it. But the likelihood of that fire, it didn't affect a whole lot of people. A lot of World War II veterans, it did. But if you were in service around 1973, then your records are probably okay. But it really all depends on where. And then there's like an alphabetical thing. It was like A through F or something like that. So, it didn't affect all records, just some. But we can definitely look into that if you needed help with getting your records. Not a problem. Does that answer your question? Perfect. You're very welcome. All right, so presumptive disability claims, right? So let's see what's next here. So the presumptive claims are part of the PACT Act, or at least there's a couple of different laws that go into this. But basically, the presumption is if you were in X location from this date to this date, and you have one of these, 20 conditions that are related to exposure in this location, service connection is automatically granted. All right, so you don't have to, you don't have to prove it. So that's essentially what presumption is. And then, if you had conditions prior to service, like a blown out knee from, high school sports or something like that, the military would still let you in with a waiver, and then through your time in the service ended up, making that knee kind of worse. That's called an aggravation, right? Aggravated claim. Or a secondary, right? So say you have a service-connected condition, and this service-connected condition has caused another condition, right? That would be secondary. So you can claim it even though it wasn't caused in service. It can be, tied to something that is caused in service. What we see a lot is going to be like hips, right? Hips or knees. So if your left knee is bad and now you use your right knee too much and now your right knee is starting to have problems, that would be secondary. Even though the right knee is not connected to service, your left knee is, and one causes the other. All right. So what kind of evidence do you need to submit? All right, so with this, the biggest thing is going to be medical records. Okay, so they want to have, right, we need those three things, right? We need a diagnosis, we need some kind of connection to service, and I don't think I said the third thing, but you need to have a chronic condition. Okay, so this condition has to be current condition. If you rolled your ankle 40 years ago and then never talked about your ankle ever again, it's not a chronic condition, okay? So what the VA really looks for, there's no magic number on how recent you had to have been seen for this condition, but I always tell people within at least the last 3 to 4 years, you've been to a doctor for it, right? So you want to make sure that you have up-to-date medical records and you present those. Now, if you go to BAMC or you go to Wilford Hall, or any of the DoD clinics, or you go to the VA, you don't have to get those records. All you have to do is tell us, hey, I go to BAMC, or hey, I go to the Northwest Federal VA Clinic, or whatever the case is, right? And then we tell the VA, hey, all the records you need are at this clinic. And the VA, as a part of their duty to assist, will grab those records from that clinic. So you don't have to go through BAMC and then wait 3 or 4 months for them to print it out for you or anything like that. Just tell us, like, hey, I go to a DoD clinic. All right, so one of the things I also mentioned is supporting statements from family, friends, or coworkers, clergy, or law enforcement to basically just speak to whatever the condition is. If you don't really have it in your record that you got hurt, but you've got people that you still talk to that can kind of corroborate that, like, yeah, I was there when they fell out of the truck, or whatever the case is, we can get statements from that. And those lay witness statements, they're called buddy statements on the street, right? So if you do get one of those, the VA does have to consider that as evidence, okay? So that is it as far as what evidence is required, medical evidence being number one. Also, if you've never filed before, like I said earlier, we do need a copy of your DD-214 to just show that characterization of separation or character of discharge. Like I said earlier, anything other than dishonorable or bad conduct, you're probably okay, but the VA still needs a record of that to show, hey, here's the deal. All right, presumptive condition. I already talked about this a little bit, but the VA automatically presumes that certain disabilities were caused by military service. This is because of a unique circumstance or a specific, something specific in the veteran's military service record, right? So really this is gonna be a lot of war zone areas, right? So if you were in Vietnam and you were exposed to Agent Orange, there's a list of, I want to say it's 22 conditions that basically, if you have it and you were in Vietnam, or at least within 12 nautical miles from a certain date to a certain date, then yeah, that's automatically presumed. You just have to show that you're diagnosed with it with medical evidence and then submit the claim for it. Okay, so just some stuff, plans for success. Like I said, make sure that you have a current medical condition and that it's a chronic condition, and that you have the evidence to support that it is current. Like I said, last couple of years, 3 to 4 years. If you have never filed a VA claim, the VA will first look in your service treatment record for diagnosis and chronic complaints. Now the VA has that duty to assist, so just make sure that if they're not able to track down records and things like that, that you try to kind of get them on your own. Yes?
First time claim.
Yes.
Suppose they submitted a claim previously which was denied, and now you want to submit a claim for a different ailment. Are we supposed to file as the first time or a second time, or is that new additional?
Okay, yeah, so the question is this. If you've already submitted a VA claim and say that claim was denied, and now you have a new condition you're trying to submit, is that a first-time claim? No, it is not. Yeah, so it is going to be a new increase, okay? So you're either adding new stuff or you're asking for an increase if your C file or your claims file and all that has already been established. It's not a first-time claim. Now, if you wanted to appeal that original decision for that first condition you put in, we could also do that as well. Right? We can appeal that, not a problem. Just have to show or present new and relevant evidence to support that, it is a chronic condition and it is caused by service.
So that submission, I guess I don't understand that. When I come in to see you, I come in to appeal the first denial. I also have additional problems. So what's the process for that? Is that all done at the same time?
Yeah, it can be. So the question is, okay, do you have to appeal and in the same time do the new and increase. You don't have to. So say like you're like, hey, I'm writing off the first condition I had. You know, maybe it's not service connected, and I just leave it alone. You can do that too. You don't have to appeal it. But when you come in to do a new increase, it's the same criteria, right? So you have to present evidence. You have to show that whatever the condition is caused by service, and that it's a chronic condition. So the requirements don't change. It's just that it's just the way it's labeled. It has nothing to do with really the process. It's just the title of the type of claim. Yeah. The veteran pension. Now, pension is, it's a little tough, right? So say you're not eligible for disability compensation, and you are basically under the median threshold for income for poverty, right? Which I believe is 15,000 something. They just changed it, but yeah, the poverty level is $15,000. If you make less than $15,000 a year, you could potentially submit for pension. Now there's some criteria with that, so you must have a few things here. One being you didn't receive a dishonorable discharge. Your yearly family income is less than whatever the threshold is set by Congress for poverty. Additionally, you must have served before 1980. You served at least 90 days on active duty with at least 1 day in wartime, or if you served as an enlisted person after September 7th, 1980, you served at least 2 years, or the full time in which you were called to active duty with at least 1 day in wartime. Or if you were an officer and you started on active duty after October 16th, 1981, you haven't previously served on active duty for at least 24 months. So if you went like enlisted officer or whatever the case is. And again, you have to be at least 65 years or older, or have permanent total disability, or you're the patient in a nursing home or a long-term care facility, or you're getting Social Security disability insurance or supplemental security income. So there's a lot of requirements for pension, which is probably why it's one of the hardest ones to get awarded. But a lot of it is going to be based off of your service and based off of your income. But that's a different story for another time. All right, so what's the PACT Act? All right, we're going to talk about PACT Act a little bit here. Now, like I said, the Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson, honoring our promise to address comprehensive toxins, or the PACT Act of 2022. It's important to know the PACT Act is not a claim. All right, so I get a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails that say, I want to do a PACT Act claim. Like, okay, cool. I don't know what that means. So if you are, like I said, if you served in a certain location and you have a certain illness that's on this list, then you are eligible to file that claim without the burden of proof, which is covered under the PACT Act. Like I said, it's not its own deal. All right, so what does this law do? It expands and extends eligibility for VA healthcare for veterans with toxic exposure and veterans of the Vietnam era, Gulf War, and post 9/11 era, as well as it expands eligibility for benefits for veterans exposed to toxic substances. And that's really what it is toxic exposure. So what kind of toxic exposure could we be expecting here? Air pollutants, burn pits, oil well fires, sulfur fires, dust, sand, particulates, any kind of chemicals like Agent Orange or other herbicides, not just orange, but there are a bunch of different ones that were used. Burn pits, a Camp Lejeune, water supply is a part of that. Any kind of pesticides, depleted uranium. If anybody here was armor, right, and you use the uranium rounds, the armor-piercing uranium rounds, then you were exposed to radiation. And then nuclear weapons testing. If you were a part of the Johnston Atoll cleanup, that would count under radiation. Warfare agents, herbicide tests, storage, mustard gas, etc., and occupational hazards, right? Asbestos, lead, fuel, exhaust, all that stuff. If you could prove you were exposed to it, you're good to go. Now, here is, I don't know how well y'all can see this list, but basically, if you served in a certain location at a certain period and have one of these presumptive conditions on this list, then you're good to go. Like if you were in Southwest Asia, and maybe in the early 90s, during the first Gulf War, and there was a lot of oil fires and things like that, you could be a part of that. and there's 19 conditions for Agent Orange. PACT Act has added 5 additional locations outside of Vietnam. So in that time period, that same time period, if you were in Guam, if you were in Thailand, if you were in Laos, Cambodia, any of those places, and even some stateside places that were storing those herbicide chemicals, like Kelly Air Force Base being one of them, through, I believe, late 70s, early 80s, if you were there, we can tie that to service as well. So that's essentially the PACT Act in a nutshell. Now again, it's not a claim, it's just a law that allows you to file a claim with less of a burden if you're in these locations. All right, so here's a caveat to that. If you have filed for one of these conditions before and were denied, you can appeal it and say that we're asking again because of change in law. So if you filed and were denied prior to August 2022, file again, and then we can definitely get that awarded for change in law. All right, so let's talk about appeals a little bit. There's 3 different types of appeals. The most common is going to be a supplemental claim, which basically is, you know, the VA's made a decision, they denied your claim, but now you have new evidence, or a doctor's note, or a nexus, a letter from your doctor that says, you know, that yeah, your condition is based off of service. That's new and relevant evidence that hasn't been considered in the previous claim. We can say, hey VA, you made this decision. We have more information to counter your decision, and we would like you to reevaluate the claim. Higher level reviews are pretty specific. It's typically if the VA has made a mistake, all right? I'd love to tell you that that's very uncommon. But that wouldn't be true. So, and it's anything from the VA to even the examiner. So if you've all have gone through the VA disability process before, you know you have those compensation and pension exams you have to go to before you can get awarded your disability to determine how bad or you know, the severity of the condition that you're trying to claim. Sometimes those doctors make mistakes. Sometimes those because I mean, we've all filled out government documents at one time in our lives, right? At least. And then sometimes it's like, I don't understand what they're actually asking me. And then you just hope for the best and then write down what you think the answer is. Now, sometimes the doctors do that too, and then the VA doesn't really call them on that mistake, but just kind of goes with the information, even if it's bad information. So then that's what's called like an inadequate exam, where the doctor made a mistake. Now we can ask for them to re-examine it, right? And with the form you guys are gonna sign today, with the 21-22, or the appointment of a veteran service organization, that also gives us the ability to look into the VA system for your file. We can look at those exams that the VA had done. We can look at the sheets, the disability benefits questionnaires that the doctor filled out, see if they didn't fill that out all the way, see if they made a mistake on it, and then submit a higher level review to the VA saying, hey, you didn't do your due diligence, this is a duty to assist error, whatever the case is. Now, the last type of claim, or appeal, sorry, is going to be the Board of Veteran Appeals. Now, the Board of Veteran Appeals is a judiciary, it's a court out in Washington, D.C., where there's a few judges that will sit and you can actually litigate your claim, or you can hire a lawyer to do it. But basically, this is the last ditch effort. If your immediate response to a denial is to do a notice of disagreement and go straight to court, the likelihood of your claim being remanded back to the VA, where they're just, the court is like, you guys didn't do what you're supposed to do, now it's going back to the VA, and you had to wait 2 years for them to give you that answer that, hey, you should have done something else other than a Board of Veteran Appeals. So it's always a good idea, if you want to appeal it, just go to a VSO or Veteran Service Officer or organization and say, hey, I want to appeal something. Don't just immediately do a Board of Veteran Appeals case, because I believe, oh yeah, the slide says 2 years, but I just had a guy not too long ago that got an answer after 5.5 years of submitting for a Board of Veteran Appeals. So and most of that's waiting to be just put on the docket, right? So you don't want that, that's no good. So go to a VSO first. There's a ton of other things we can do before we go that route. And I've only ever told one person that we should probably do a BVA case, right? So out of like maybe 1,000 people, one person I said, hey, this might be a good idea. So it's not a very common thing to do, but everybody does it because they think that's the best way to get an answer, and it is not. All right, any questions on this? No? Okay. All right, VA math. So if for those of you who have a rating right now, you'll look at your list of conditions and it probably adds up to like 200-300%. And you're like, this doesn't make any sense. Why am I at 70%, right? So the biggest misconception with this is that you're adding everything. It's actually subtracting. So so what they do is they base it off of the whole person theory, right? So no person is more than 100% capable, right? So therefore, no person is more than 100% disabled, right? So what they do is they assume that you have, when you join the military, you were 100% able. And as you get injured or have these service-connected conditions, they get rated, they start chipping away at that 100% that you started out with, okay? So there's also inside the Code of Federal Regulations, there's a chart on how to do the math. So basically, this example I have up here, when you're looking at your ratings, you always start from the highest and you go to the lowest, okay? So here, this example is, they got 3 conditions, okay? 70% rating for mental health, a 20% rating for diabetes, and then a 10% rating for peripheral neuropathy, right? So you're thinking, okay, 70, 80, 90, that's 100%, right? Well, no. So basically, you start off with the 70, right? And then what you do is on the left side here, you start out, okay, here's 70. The next thing is gonna be 20. Okay, that's 76. So then we find the 76 down here. And then, we do 10%, that's 78, right? Well, the VA will round up or down to the nearest 10. So this combined rating is actually gonna be 80%. So that's how they figure it out, right? So it's kind of like this diminishing returns. The more you have, the less it's worth. So as you get to like 90%, your 10% are only worth 1. 20s are worth 2, 3s are, 30s are worth 3. So you got to get at least that 95% rating or your raw score to get to 100, right? So you don't have to go all the way to 100. You just have to get close within the nearest 10. So that was confusing, right? Yeah, absolutely, definitely. But I mean, as wild as this sounds, this is probably the easiest way if you're going to do it by hand. But there's a lot of websites out there. There's Hill and Houghton, which is like it's a law firm that does a lot of like VA stuff. They have like a calculator. You can just put in all your stuff and all that, and then it'll tell you what your overall rating is or how they came to it. But yeah, so it's really it's a little bit confusing, but so at least you get the idea that kind of how it works. Any questions on this? Probably a lot, but hopefully I can answer them. Any questions? No? Clear as mud, right? All right, cool. Yes, ma'am.
I had understood that the ratings were a percentage of the remaining 100%. So you take one 25%, and that's 25%, but you've only got 75% ability left. So your next rating would be, if it's 30% off, would be 30% of the 75s. And then the next rating would be 10% of the remaining 45. So only the first one is full value. The rest of them are percentages of what's
That's
left.
correct. That is correct. That's a different way to explain it, but yeah, that's correct. And so, yeah, you always start with the highest rated condition you have, and that's like your baseline, right? So your combined rating, which is everything added up, will be at least 70%, right? And then you start adding that 30, and then you have like whatever's left over, and then once you get to that whatever's left over number, then you flip it, and then you times it by 100 or divide it by 100, one of those two, right? That's a different way to do it, but I know it's but this, honestly, like as crazy as it sounds, going through a giant sheet of numbers is easier than like trying to do that math. But I mean, no, it's fine. Like however you get there is how you get there, but this is the way the VA actually does it. So when you have your claim goes in and the VA is doing the the award for it. So they're like, okay, we've added all these conditions. Now we got to do all the math to figure out what we're going to pay you. This is the actual way the VA does it. So I always try to add this one, or at least talk about this one, so you could see, okay, behind the music, behind the curtain, this is how the VA makes those determinations. All right, any other questions on this? No? Okay. All right, let's talk about survivor benefits. So, for burial, so the veteran must have been compensated by the VA while alive or eligible for VA compensation. Now, this comes into play for like PACT Act, right? So if a veteran passes and then now the condition that they have is a part of this list and they were in that location, retroactively you can apply for survivor benefits. The benefit amount is based on if the veteran died of a service-connected or non-service connected. This is for burial, by the way. If you were, or the veteran was buried in like the National Cemetery, like at a Fort Sam, you're only gonna get a portion of that because Fort Sam pretty much pays for the internment and all that stuff. All you'll be responsible for is typically whatever the funeral home costs are. And if it's service connected, it's about $2,000 the VA will give you, and that's a flat rate. It doesn't really matter how much you spent on the funeral or anything. They'll just give you $2,000 to help with that. If it's service connected, I don't know the number off the top of my head. For non-service, it's less. I believe it's $700 and something. They just changed it last month, and I don't have it committed to memory yet, but it's something to that effect. So when doing when doing the survivors benefits, the things that we're going to need to help with that is going to be a death certificate, a funeral bill, itemized list, and proof of relationship. So marriage certificate, that sort of thing. Now, pension and compensation. So for the surviving spouse, there's two things that you could be eligible for. One of them is going to be DIC, which is called dependency and indemnity compensation, or survivor pension. Now, it depends on what the veteran passed from. Did they pass from something that was service connected, right? So if they have service connection for a type of cancer or a heart condition or something that led to their passing, that would be service connected. If it's not service connected, then likely you would have to apply for pension. You can't get both, right? You only get whichever one you are qualified for. So if it's service connection, DIC. If it's not, pension. However, with pension, again, it's just like the veteran pension. You have to be at a certain threshold for income. It's a little bit different for this one. It's about $11,000 or $12,000, less than that, and they'll start paying. Now, the pension isn't designed to get you like a ton of extra money. What it is it's designed to get you above poverty, right? To keep you out of poverty. That's it. Now, dependency and indemnity is going to be an extra, chunk of money. It's typically $1,600 and some change. A lot of people think that when you do survivors compensation, that it is part of what the veteran is getting now. Like, okay, I'm gonna get a percentage of my spouse's VA disability. That's not the case. It's actually a separate thing that's just for you, and it's a flat rate. It's not a percentage of what they get. So even if your spouse got like 30%, disability rating, which is paid out at, I don't know, I think it's like $500 something for 30% or maybe less. So regardless of that, if they died from service connection, you get $1,600 and some change. Okay, so it has nothing to do with their ratings or anything like that. It just matters if they pass from service connected condition. All right, now, one of the caveats to that is that, say they don't die from a service-connected condition, you could still get DIC if they were at the 100% rate for at least 10 years. All right, so if they were 100% for 10 years, it doesn't matter what they passed from. Now, if you were at 100% when you got out of the military, like you were so bad off that boom, like day one they give you 100%, it's 5 years. You had to get that to get DIC, but that's really the only caveat to that. The death has to be service connected. Any questions on survivors benefits? Yes, sir.
How does that work with the survivor benefit claim?
Yeah, so SBP from like DFAS, yeah, that's totally different. Yeah, so this is a different pot of money. It's a different program. Yeah, so they shouldn't conflict with each other, because VA will contact DFAS and DFAS will contact VA just to make sure the surviving dependent is getting what they need to be getting. But that's really the only time that they talk to each other. It's just to make sure that it's all done. Cool. All right, you're welcome. Eddie, yes, ma'am.
My husband recently passed.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And I owe the VA a death certificate.
Okay.
Is that something that you want me to provide to them?
Absolutely, yes.
What's the question?
So the question is, her husband recently passed, and the VA is needing a death certificate, right? And she had asked, can we help send that to the VA? And the answer is yes. Yes, we can. Absolutely. Any documentation that's pending, anything that you need to help be submitted to the VA, we can 100% help you submit it to the VA. Not a problem at all. Any other questions? No? Okay. All right, so here's just kind of some easy things to do on the VA website. Now, this is like, if you don't really go on there, this is really kind of moot, doesn't really help you at all, but kind of the easiest things you can do for yourself is to check the status of your claim, change your direct deposit, change your address, all that stuff, super easy to do on the website. However, we can still we can do that for you as well. So if you're not tech savvy or want to really kind of dive into the VA website to do that, we can absolutely help you with that. It's not a problem at all. All right, so you can keep updated here with VA website, Texas Veterans Commission. You can absolutely go through them for assistance. Combined Arms is a part of the Texas Veterans Network that has about 250 community-based organizations. That's a website you can definitely go to find some resources outside of just VA disability benefit. Some helpful phone numbers. The Suicide and Crisis Hotline is a big one. The VA hotline at 1-800-827-1000 is if you're just looking to check on the status of your claim. Can we do that for you? Yes, sure, okay. But understand that as veteran service officers, I have like 250 something pending claims right now. So I get a lot of phone calls of, hey, what's my claim doing? So what that does is that takes away from the other, 258 people who are also asking me that question. So I can't help everybody on that piece, but if you call the number and you say, hey, I'm just looking for a status update, they can give you the exact same information I can give you. It's open, it's pending, it's closed, they made a decision, here's the date of your letter, whatever, right? So that's kind of one of those things to kind of help yourself. Now, I did say we do case management, we help you out. If you got questions, things like that, I'd be more than happy to answer them for you. But just to kind of help us help you, call the 800 number if you've got questions about the status of your claim. Now, we have our phone number up here too, the Bexar County Department of Military and Veteran Services. You can call there. Mr. Cortez will answer any questions that he can. For homeless assistance, VA healthcare, vet centers, and DFAS, the numbers are up there as well. All right.
Does somebody ever answer that DFAS number?
I had something snarky to say, but I'm going to hold that to myself. Somebody somewhere works there. If they're near the phone, I couldn't tell you. Yeah, I try not to call them if I don't have to. But yeah, unfortunately, yeah. It is the federal government. Yes, ma'am. So the question is, if the veteran, their, mental capacity is diminished and they're not able to really track their own stuff and get on the DS login, get on the VA website, call the VA, ask questions, things like that. Now, as far as the DS login, I can't really speak on that. If you're able to kind of get the information from him or whatever, or maybe call them. Oh, I know that's a dumb thing to say, but it's the only thing I can think of. Call them. Yeah, so just to kind of recap on that, if you are comfortable signing it on your phone, the form has been sent to you to sign. If you need assistance, we have folks over here that are more than happy to help. Now, to finish answering your question, ma'am. So there's a form with the VA called a authorization to disclose to a third party. So my recommendation for all the veterans and their spouses, at least fill that part out, or that form out, so that your spouse can call on your behalf to the VA to get information. So consent to a third party. If the veteran is able to sign those forms, that would be very helpful. Otherwise, there's other avenues to do that for, you know, witnesses of signatures and things like that. We'd have to get like a whole group of people to kind of assist with that. But that consent to third party is going to be a big part of that. Yes, ma'am.
Is that form online?
You can find it online, but if you sit down with us, we can also fill that out and do all that business now. Or not right now, but next Monday when we come back. And if you make an appointment and you sit down with us, we can do the third party consent. Absolutely. No problem.